Hi, I'm Natalie Heacock.
And I'm Chelsea Brown. And this is Lumber Slingers.
Each podcast, we will be bringing you relevant and useful industry information, including interviews with top lumber professionals and discussion of current events in the industry.
Whether it be lumber grading, industry and market trends, or who's who in lumber, we hope to extend your current tally on industry knowledge.
Hi, Chels.
Hi, Nat.
Welcome back. We're so excited today. In real life, we are recording a video.
I'm very excited about this.
And you will be able to see the video on the internet.
Yes, it's very important because we're learning some big things today.
We have microphones, real ones.
Yeah, we sound good.
It's not our cell phone any longer.
We're moving up.
So that being said, if you are listening to this as a podcast, know that there is a video to accompany it.
And we highly suggest you watch the video.
Yes. It's going to be good.
Yes. So, should we go ahead and get rolling and get our...
Do it?
Yeah.
Let's do
get
it.
our guests introduced. Awesome. Well, today we are bringing in a wonderful woman who we've met in the industry many years ago and look up to. And it's a topic that I'm passionate about in sales because a lot of people ask me how to convert footage. And so today we're bringing on Tina Breen from Manufacturers Reserve Supply. Hi, Tina.
Hello, ladies.
So happy to have you. Thank you
Yes.
so much.
It was my pleasure. I was very excited to get this call. So thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thanks for being here. So Tina is the Vice President of Sales and Marketing at Manufacturers Reserve Supply, and she has 15 years of experience in the lumber industry. Tina graduated with a BS in psychology with a concentration in industrial and organizational psychology, and she's currently working on her master's degree at Purdue University. Not a big deal.
I didn't know that. That's exciting.
Yeah.
Are you getting an MBA
Yeah.
or?
Yep, my master's MBA. So industrial organizational psychology is actually a leadership degree, which doesn't sound like it when you first hear it, but it's how to use psychology in the workplace. So how to understand
Ooh, that's
people, how to understand how to make happy and more productive employees. It's pretty heavy on the HR side, but since I love working with people, it just made sense for me to dive in that direction.
That's
interesting.
awesome. When will you be done?
So I have 18 more months until my master's is done.
Oh, gosh.
Oh, that's not very much.
That's awesome.
Well, Tina, I'd like to discuss how you first got into the industry.
So before the lumber industry, I was in the automotive industry on the wholesale side, and I wasn't happy there anymore. So I put my resume on monster.com, I think it was. That's when Monster was the most valuable resource for looking for a new job. And I got a phone call randomly from Steve Boyd at Manufacturers Reserve Supply. And he had told me a little bit about the company and about the job, and I really wasn't interested. I hate to say that now, but I mean, I was thinking like the lumber industry, selling wood, like I don't even understand what this is. But you know what? I haven't been on an interview in 15 years. So I'm going to go. I'm going to go and brush up on my interview skills. So I came up here and wasn't too impressed. However, it was Steve Boyd who brought me into this industry. So his leadership, his vision, what he wanted me to do at this company, the difference that I could make, the purpose that I would have, really just sunk into me. And I didn't care at that point what Manufacturers Reserve Supply sold. I wanted to work with Steve.
That's awesome.
So that's how I got into the industry. And you know, in leadership, people say, you know, it doesn't matter what job I have, it's the people that I work with. And I really believe that, and I live it, and I preach it, and I teach it. It's all about the people. So that's how I got in. And then I wound up falling in love with the industry and the people and the customers and everyone I work with and everyone I meet along the way. So I was so blessed to have been tapped to come into this industry. And I'm glad I gave it a shot because it's full of great people.
We should do a different podcast because our stories are very similar. I was like, I need practice interviewing. Here I am 8 years later, same company.
Yep.
It's interesting.
Same for me.
We should, to hire employees, we should like rebrand it as interview practice and then just keep them.
That's a good,
You might be onto something there.
that's a good recruitment tool.
Yeah.
Could be.
So, Tina, the topic today is board footage, lineal footage, volume conversion. How did you learn, and why did you get interested in learning? Because you're in your role. Your title is sales and marketing.
Yeah.
Do you have to do a lot of conversions?
So for me, it's interesting. When I first started working here 15 years ago, a lot of the products that we sold were wood. And yes, we had to do a lot of conversions. We were doing a lot of decking in Ipe and Western Red Cedar. We were doing porch flooring in Meranti, and we were doing strip oak flooring. And all of that requires conversions because when you buy it by the board feet or the board foot. And then when you sell it, you're selling it by the lineal foot. And then contractors want it by the square foot. So there was a lot of conversions when I first started working here. And I had a hard time with the math because people were just teaching me the formulas. They weren't teaching me what was behind the formulas.
Right.
And I think that's the coolest part about our episode today is that you really encouraged us to do this video so that we can share that with everyone. Because as Chelsea always says, I mean, she's more, she's closer to the new hires that we have, the new traders, and she explains it all the time. I do the formulas just for inventory counts or converting things for the accounting side of the business. But I'm excited to actually see it because I only know the formulas.
Well, when we talk about bringing new people into the industry, people that don't have experience in lumber, and you're explaining to them how to convert material, you really have to explain the why. Because if you didn't grow up in the lumber industry and you're not thinking about literally cutting down a tree and trying to maximize every piece of fiber and sell every piece of fiber that's in that tree, then you're not going to get why you're doing the conversions. You're just going to memorize the formulas and not understand them. And that was the disconnect for me. I didn't understand that a board foot was a volume unit of measure. I had really never had to deal with that in my life. I always dealt with a tape measure and lineal feet. That's all I knew or all I understood. And even when people were talking to me about a board foot, in my head, it was still lineal. I didn't understand it was 3-dimensional. It was volume. And that's kind of one of the things that we wanted to drive home today is understanding what a board foot is and understanding it's a volume unit of measure.
How long do you think it took you to finally master it after you started in the industry?
So I don't know that I would consider myself a master, but I know enough to get by. I know enough to understand why we're doing conversions. I know where to find help if I need it. I know which online calculators are good and which are bad. I know which websites I can find resources that have the conversion charts if I need some help. And then if I'm still not confident in my calculation, I know who to call to double check my math. I'm not an expert, but I'm where I need to be. And I'm hoping to get other people who watch this podcast more comfortable with the conversions just by understanding it a little bit better.
Awesome. I say we dive in.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. So let's start with board foot. What is a board foot?
Well, by definition, a board foot is a volume measurement that's impacted by 3 dimensions. So remember I said before it was 3-dimensional? Thickness, width, and length. So a board foot, I have a little visual for you. Now this is a piece of plywood, okay? It's not a solid piece of wood, but I couldn't afford that these days. So I got a piece of plywood, but pretend this is a solid piece of like oak. So a board foot is 12 inches by 12 inches by 1 inch thick. That is a board foot.
So what you're holding in your hand right now is one board foot.
What I'm holding in my hand is 1 board foot of wood. Now, it doesn't have to be 12 by 12 by 1. It can be other sizes. So if we took a 12 by 12 by 1 piece, cut it in half, and then folded it over, this is also a board foot. This is a board foot of wood. This is 2 inches by 12 inches by 6 inches. So this is also a board foot, remembering that it's a volume unit of measure. Now, if you cut that in half and folded it in half, this is also a board foot. So this is 4 inches by 6 inches by 6 inches. This is also a board foot. So is that starting to make sense?
Yes, this is awesome.
Okay. That is how Steve Boyd explained it to me, because I wasn't getting it. And he literally took pieces of wood out of our warehouse and cut them up like that. And he said, this is a board foot. This is also a board foot. This is also a board foot. And he said, no matter what shape and size these fibers of wood are, the volume is still a board foot. So then I got it. And then what really drove it home was I started Googling it on YouTube. And I found a video, which I can't find today, 15 years later, it's not there, but there's other great videos. But a guy had a gallon of water, okay? So I brought here just a gallon of water. And if you take this gallon of water, so gallon is also a volume unit of measure, and you pour this gallon of water into a bucket, it's gonna take on a different shape, but it's still a gallon of water. If I pour it into 10 drinking glasses, it's still a gallon of water. If I pour it into the bathtub, it's still a gallon of water. So same as a board foot. It can take different shapes and size, but one board foot is 12 by 12 by 1 inch, just like a gallon, and then it can be other shapes and sizes.
That's so helpful because my brain, when I hear a board foot, it wants to think of the same size like the same amount of wood. But it is the same amount of wood, but I just think of it as, a linear foot, basically, when I think of a board foot.
Well, you need to take thickness into consideration. And sometimes I think that's where new people into the industry aren't thinking of that, because all of our lives we've talked about square feet. Everyone knows what a square foot is. And everyone knows what 1 foot is on a tape measure, which is a lineal foot. But not everyone takes into account the thickness and how much wood fiber is in that as a whole. Because all of the wood that you and I deal with are lots of different shapes and sizes, 2x4s, 2x6s. Then you've got flooring that's, 3 1/4 or 4 inches by maybe 5/4 or maybe 1 inch. So there's all different sizes, and you've got to think about how much fiber is actually in that piece of wood that you're purchasing.
Right. Okay. Would you like to go through the other, like, maybe what is a square foot? Maybe some people are wondering, I don't actually know what a square foot is. So what's the difference?
Yeah.
What's a square foot?
Yeah, they might not. So a square foot is the amount of flat space that it takes to cover an area, which is 12 inches by 12 inches.
So no thickness involved in that.
No thickness involved. It's one dimensional, and it's just the surface amount that needs to get coverage, usually by flooring, but it's just a 12 by 12 square on the floor. It's not 3-dimensional.
Okay. And then a lineal foot, like you said, is...
Yeah, so a lineal foot is the measurement that's just 12 inches long. It's measured in a straight line, and that's why it's called lineal. Or some people say linear or lineal. But, in our industry, there's a lot of lumber terms. That could be a whole nother podcast. But there's a lot of terms, and sometimes different terms will mean the same thing. But you can use the words lineal or linear interchangeably.
Okay.
I think most of us use lineal.
Yeah.
What do you guys use?
I've heard both ways, even in my own company. Two different people will use two different words. I use lineal.
I say lineal as
But
well.
I think contractors are like, if you go to Home Depot, don't they say linear? Like, do you mean linear? I'm like, no, lineal. Anyway, you can get hung up on that all day. It's the same thing.
So where do you normally see square feet? I feel like I see it mostly in flooring.
So you do see it a lot in flooring, but you'll also see it in roofing and siding. In that, 100 square feet is 1 square. And for roofing and siding, they talk in terms of squares, not square feet. So 1 square equals 100 square feet. I think it might be because it's such large spaces. Roofs can be 30 or 40 square. Siding can be anywhere from 25 to, as big as your house could be, but it's a lot of square feet. So they talk in terms of square, and siding companies sell in terms of squares, and so do a lot of Western red cedar, shingle and shake manufacturers. We sell in terms of squares.
So if somebody was to say, I need 50 square of this, they don't mean 50 square feet. Those are two different terms.
Oh yeah, those
Much
are two
like
different
board
terms.
foot and
Yeah, so
per
50
thousand board feet.
square is going to be 50 times 100.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
I did not know that at all. And then last one is lineal foot for those who don't know.
So lineal foot is 12 inches long, and it's measured in a straight line. And that's why it's called lineal. Like a tape measure. It's just going to be in a straight line. So that's 12 inches.
And where is that used mainly?
Everywhere.
Yeah, building, everything.
I think we've all had a tape measure in our hands since we were little kids. Sometimes I'll see lineal feet for trim boards. How many lineal feet do you need of trim, or how many lineal feet do you need of soffit? Or it's parts of a house inside or outside or a commercial building that are long and straight. What other places can you guys think of where we would use lineal?
I was just wondering too if like lineal is used instead of board foot when the thickness is already predetermined or something, but maybe I'm just making that up. I don't know.
Well, you definitely use it when you're figuring out square feet, because you take the height times the width, or the length times the width, to figure out square feet. So you're running a lineal measurement each way and then multiplying it out.
I use it sometimes to double check my board footage count on certain things, because the lineal is actually easier to find than the board. You have more steps for the board foot. So sometimes I use that to double check.
And when we talk about the math of all of this, there are multiple ways to do the math. There's not always one perfect and right way, which is good, because then you can go back and double check yourself by running the math backwards, or by using a different formula.
Right.
Gotcha. So should we get into it? Some examples?
Yeah, let's get into some examples. What do you think, Tina?
Sure, I'm ready. This is the fun part. Well, actually, the fun part was showing you pieces of board feet. The math part's not as fun. But you kind of need to understand that before you do the math. At least that's how my brain works. And that's how a lot of adult learners work. And especially if you're a visual learner.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I remember being in high school and learning algebra and calculus, and it was just memorizing formulas. I never understood where you would apply those formulas.
Right.
Still don't understand that.
Yeah.
All of a
And I
sudden.
remember thinking to myself, man, just get me out of high school so I never have to use another formula again for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And then look where I am. Not only am I using them, but now I'm about to teach them. It's funny how life works out that way.
It does. So I think we had an example of like, is this on your visual that you want to start sharing your screen? The
Yeah.
1x4
I will,
fluorine example?
Screen
Okay.
share for us. Yeah. There we go. All
The
right. Let me
cutest
know when you
PowerPoint
guys can
ever.
see it.
We can see it. And if you're not watching yet, you really need to watch because this is the sweetest visual.
Tina made just the most cute, adorable lumber slides.
Yeah, I tried to pick something that looked like a little tree.
It looks like
Maybe
it. All right. Lumber conversions. So we're talking about a contractor who wants to purchase some 1x4 flooring to cover 100 square feet. Oh, there we are.
Sorry, my clicker's not working. All right, I got it. Yeah, so here's our common example that we were talking about before we put this podcast together. And, or actually, is this called a vlog now? Because we're video.
Maybe.
I have to start using the right words. So a contractor who wants to order 100 square feet of 1x4 flooring. So it doesn't matter what the flooring is for the purposes of the math. It could be strip oak, it could be mahogany, what have you. Maybe they want to do a small bedroom and they come to you and they say, I'd like to quote 100 square feet of 1x4 flooring. Now what? Right? What do we do?
Sounds like all my customers. I'm like, buy a whole unit.
Right? Wouldn't that just be so much easier? I know. So you have to start thinking about, okay, what are all the pieces and the information that I need to know to be able to quote this from my supplier and then quote it to a contractor. So we might want to start thinking about, okay, my supplier works in board feet. How many board feet do I need to ask for? And then how do I price my contractor? He doesn't use board feet. He uses lineal feet. Or what if he uses square feet? And where do I go if I need help? So let's start to work through this a little bit. Are you guys ready for this next slide?
I'm ready.
ready.
Should I get my calculator?
Is there going to be a test at the end?
No, I can promise you there will not be a test. All right, let me put on my glasses so I can see what I'm doing. All right. How many board feet is in a square feet? So that's the first thing that you need to figure out. And this is a straight conversion. This is a formula that you should keep handy. But just remember when you're doing this, what you're doing. So you're taking a flat measure of surface, which is the 100 square feet, and now you're adding thickness for whatever size you need. Now you need a 1x4, so that's 1 inch thick by 4 inches wide, and that'll be a long piece of flooring.
It's important, I think, to note that if somebody was like just starting in the industry and they're like, how many board feet is 100 square feet? You cannot just make a conversion without knowing the size. You cannot make that conversion without knowing, is it 1x4? Is it 1x6? Right? There's no like 100 board equals this square feet all the time.
Yep.
You have to know what size you're working in.
Because it's a volume measurement. I'm going to always remember that.
Yep. And that's a concept that'll help you wrap your head around all the conversions. You just feel like you understand it more. Mm-hmm. You know, when you're doing numbers on spreadsheets or you have to take a step back and look at it and go, does this make sense? Do these numbers make sense? Well, you can't make sense of things if you don't know where they came from. And that's why understanding what a board foot is so important. All right, so we look at this formula. So to convert square footage into board footage, you take the thickness times the width divided by 12 times the square footage. This is just a simple formula. And if you forget it, it's here in this presentation, or you can Google this one. This one's very common, Googled. There's a few resources, like industry resources that'll have it on their website, and including our website at Manufacturers Reserve Supply.
Okay.
So I wrote out the formula on the bottom right here. So we have the thickness times the width, which is 1 times 4 divided by 12 times 100, because it's 100 square feet. And that brings us to 33.333 board feet. Now, you're not going to ask your supplier for 33.333 board feet. So you want to round it up a little bit. And then some people will add 5% to that for waste, if you like. Now, for the purposes of the rest of this exercise, I did not add waste. But most people will add a little bit of waste for, oops, I cut that wrong.
Right.
Or maybe they do a little angle cut.
Would you
or
say
something.
5% is industry standard?
5% is industry standard. I've also seen 10, but 5 is much more conservative.
Okay.
All right, any questions so far?
No.
All right, so now we have our board footage. So now we're gonna call our mill, or mills, and we're gonna get some quotes. So let's say that the best quote is $2,550. So that's $2,550 per thousand. That's that /M per thousand. Well, what is that? What is per thousand? What am I going to do with that number? Thanks a lot, Mr. Mill. Like, can't you just give that to me in lineal feet, please?
No, I can't.
But I'll tell you, this industry is moving towards lineal feet.
You think so?
At least on my side. Now, both of you ladies work for mills, right?
Well, we do more secondary manufacturing. So, but yeah, everything's in board foot per 1,000 board feet is how we price things out.
So when I started here 15 years ago, everything in our computer was board foot. But every single phone call that we got as the years went on, it was more and more of the lumber yards that we work with. So the retailers, they just did not know how to do the conversions. And we were having to do the conversions for every single quote to lineal feet. And they could not price per thousand, forget that. So we actually changed our computer system over. And now we price by the lineal foot, and we sell by the lineal foot for all of our sizes. We were spending too much time doing the conversions, so we set our computer system up to do it for us.
Wow.
And that was a big culture shift here.
Yes.
I bet.
But the next generation doesn't.
But
Yeah.
it's a whole you have to change the way you think.
So much. It took us years. And we did like one size at a time, a little bit at a time. It probably took us 8 years to.
It's learning a
switch
new
everything
language,
over.
basically.
I would agree with that statement. So a price, $2,550 per thousand, that's per 1,000 board feet. But you don't need 1,000 board feet. You only need, what do we need? I'm gonna go back a slide. We need 34, 35 board feet. So what do I do with that? So of course, we're gonna move on to our next slide. And now you need to convert that price into a lineal foot so that you can work with that as you want to price out your contractor. For this conversion, you need a board foot factor chart, which you can find on MRS's website, or you can find on lots of other websites on the internet. I'm going to show you a conversion chart in the next slide. So I'm going to go back and forth between these two slides a little bit. So first you need to find a conversion chart, because every different size of wood is going to have a different factor that you're going to need to multiply by. And that's the factor that accommodates your depth of wood. That's what changes it from a volume unit of measure to a lineal foot of measure, is this conversion factor.
Okay.
So I had to find the factor for 1/4. Now it's 3,000. I'm going to show that to you in a chart next.
Okay.
But then you have a formula. And the formula is price divided by factor. So our price was $25.50, the factor is 3,000, so my price is 85 cents a lineal foot. Now, don't forget to mark it up. So I have that in the bottom right. Right? So that's your cost. Okay? Don't forget to mark it up before you go and sell it to your contractor.
Good point.
Yeah. So before I move on, is there any questions so far?
So basically, just to summarize, we know we're getting 33 board feet at this price from our mill, and now we're turning around and we're saying we're going to sell it at 85. Well, our cost is 85 cents a linear foot. So we've done the top end, we're the middle, and now we're going downstream, I guess.
Yes.
Visually,
Yep.
I'm just seeing it.
Yeah. It's through the whole process. It's from, the mill or the manufacturer to the two-stepper, the wholesaler, to the lumber yard, and then to the retailer, like the contractor, or if it's a homeowner buying it. But all of us use different units of measure. So that's why you have to keep converting.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see this conversion chart. I'm a little excited.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Scary. Don't be scared.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot. And this conversion chart is I cited it in the bottom from the WWPA, and they've put together a really nice conversion chart that will handle almost all of the factors for different conversions that you'll have to do. But for the sake of this podcast, we're going to keep it simple. We're just doing one conversion because one conversion has one problem that we're working through has 3 or 4 conversions. So we don't want to get too far in this one day. So this next slide, I zoomed in to where we needed to be. So this red line that I'm showing underneath the factor where we needed to be. So we're working with a piece of wood, piece of flooring that's 1x4. So you slide over all the way over to the left, and our factor for lineal feet per 1,000 board feet is 3,000. So that's where you're getting your factor. And if you go back to the big sheet, look down the green column that says nominal size. That's where you have all your different sizes of wood. You've got your, what are else more populars? You've got, your 1x4, you've got your 1x10, 2x4, 2x6, your 4x, your 6x. Those are all down. That's the column that I hover in the most to find the factor all the way to the left.
My favorite size conversion is 2x6 because it's always the same. 1,000 lineal, 2x6 is 1,000 board. And then if it's a 1x6, I always just split it in half. So that's the quickie.
Yeah.
That's the quick one.
Yeah. That's an easy one. We like that one.
Yeah, my favorite.
Yeah. So going back to converting the board foot price to a lineal foot price, you need your factor chart. So you need to find the chart, and then you can do the formula is easy. It's the price divided by the factor.
Yeah.
You just have to know, the conversion. So you have to know the formulas. Whatever side of the business that you're in, you'll find yourself doing the same ones, that you're using the same formulas over and over. And then you just make yourself a little, you just make yourself a little cheat sheet so that you can keep going back to the same ones.
And I think that's the secret. It seems really overwhelming at first. I remember I'd always go to my boss's office and have him help me every time. And I was like, why do I still not understand it? Because there were so many steps, and he has all the factors memorized. So he'd just be typing it into his calculator. And I'd be like, how do I not know this by now? Because I didn't have the visual steps to go through it. So this might seem overwhelming for if there's somebody new watching this that's trying to learn it. But really, like Tina said, you start to learn it and pick up your own tricks. You have your own cheat sheet. You have your conversion chart maybe on your desktop or at your desk. And it'll become like second nature. Like you'll be much quicker at it. So don't get discouraged. It does seem like a lot at first, but you learn it. It takes about 15 years, but you'll get it.
I'm always amazed by the people who have memorized the conversion charts.
I just don't have space in my brain for that. I'd rather have be used on something else.
Me too.
I used to work with a gentleman. His name was Ross Hodgins, and he was like the lumberman of the year. And I mean, he was just famous in our little world. And he used to walk outside and he would look at a whole bunch of lifts of wood, and he would take his thumb and he'd look at it like down, and he had some crazy way. Now, this is a bad practice. Don't ever do this. But he would look at something and he'd be like, yeah, that's 25,000 board feet right there. Like everybody's got their own little way. And he was right. He was correct every time. It was like the weirdest thing I ever saw.
Wild.
It's a different level.
Yeah. Love Ross. But for people like me, I need a formula.
Right,
I need
right.
numbers. I can't do that.
Okay, so we got board foot to lineal foot pricing. We got our chart.
All right. So you can quote your contractor 85 cents a lineal foot. But what if he's like, wait a minute,
I need it.
I don't want the price in a lineal foot. I want a square foot. So you're like, oh man, because it's not easy. It's not like it's a 6-inch board. So if it was a 6-inch board, it'd be so easy. Just do that easy math. But if this is a 4-inch board, so you've got another formula. But this one is one that we all kind of learned in grammar school, so it's not too bad. So you've got, think about it, right? So a square foot is 12 by 12. So you need to figure out how many 4-inch pieces of flooring are going to fit into a square or fit into 12 inches. Now, luckily, we're dealing with 1 by 4. Mm-hmm. So you take 12 divided by 4, and then multiply that by your lineal feet,
factor.
and that's 0.85.
So
And then you get
the variables in this equation that will change depending on the size that you're working on. You're always going to have the 12 divided by, but that width and the price are going to be variables that change in your formula each time, depending on what you're working on.
Yep. So you always have the 12 because it's a square foot that he wants, and that's 12 inches. So 12 divided by the width. So you might have a 6-inch board, you might have a 3-inch board. 12 divided by the width times the price. And that'll give you your square foot price. So this example is $2.55 per square feet. So maybe now your contractor who's talking to his homeowner, because homeowners think in square feet, now he'll mark that up again to the homeowner and quote them in a square foot price.
Wow.
And now you're done, right? There's no more? Is that it?
Yeah. So hopefully we all get the order. I mean, a lot of times in real life, these are all quotes. And then the contractor gets the job and gets a deposit. And then they go back to the retailer and they order it. And then the retailer orders it from the wholesaler, and the wholesale order, kind of goes up the chain.
Up the chain. Yeah.
Up and down.
Wow.
This was
But
so
yeah,
helpful.
that's our simple, our easy example. I mean, they can get more complicated, but this was a nice example of a conversion of a typical piece of flooring. How do I buy it? How do I quote it?
Oh, this is a great slide. Tina just put up a really great resource page for all of these conversions, online calculators, that conversion sheet, Western Wood Products Association. YouTube is very helpful. That's how I learned how to change a flat tire, man. Like, you can learn anything on YouTube.
Yeah, that's true.
But also, I like on here, she has your supplier. Make sure you have the answers to their questions before you call. And that's true. You have to have the conversations and know the details, because sometimes you have a missing link. So it's okay to make that call and ask all those questions. And also lean on people in your company to learn. Slow down for me. Like, how did you do this?
Right. Don't be afraid to ask. You're not supposed to just walk in knowing these things.
I know. People act like you are, but it's okay.
It's okay. Come to us.
Yeah.
Come to Tina, actually.
Yeah. MRSlumber.com.
There are a lot of great tools on our website. There's a lot of conversion calculator or conversion charts up there. We actually have an in-house Excel spreadsheet where we can just type in what size wood product you have and how many lineal feet they want, and then it'll convert it to board feet for you. I'm working on getting that added to our website, but it's not up there today.
Okay.
But I did find a bunch of other online calculators. I think the best one I found was a company called Trestlewood. They've got a website with some great online calculators, but you can just Google and find a bunch of them. And that's always helpful. But to know how to do it manually gives you a different level of expertise and knowledge in the industry. To not have to rely on calculators all the time
Right.
will
Or your
just
boss.
help. Or your boss. It'll just level you up as an industry professional.
Yeah, I agree. Sometimes I do my board footage calculation with my board foot price. And then when I work it as a square foot into the square foot price, I just make sure like my total at the end matches. And if it doesn't, then I know something in my formula. That's another way to just double check that you're quoting the same thing, apples to apples here. So there are a lot of tools to use, especially like the spreadsheet you're talking about. It really is helpful to understand it before you use something like a spreadsheet, just to know like why you're plugging this number in, the meaning behind it. So that's very helpful. Ammerhart also has a very good like lineal to board foot conversion calculator where you just plug and go, and they do the pricing for you as well. So we'll link some of
that's
these in
great.
our show
Yes,
notes.
definitely.
And some of the things that you listed also on that slide for the listeners. But thank you, Tina. That was so useful.
Definitely. And now it is time for rapid fire.
Are you
Oh
ready?
boy, I don't know if I'm ready for that. We can take a drink before we do that.
They're not hard, or they're not supposed to be hard.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
What's the last book you read?
Oh boy, this kind of rapid fire. Okay.
1x4.
Yeah. Ready,
Square
go.
foot.
Oh my gosh, the last book I read was called A Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl.
Do you recommend?
Yes, it was recommended to me, and it's the story of a Holocaust survivor who lost everything. He lost his children, he lost his wife, he was beaten, he was starved, he was everything, and it was how he got through that, and what the true meaning of life is. And it was just very powerful book. I mean, he survived all of that. He got out of the Holocaust and went on to have a productive and happy life, which,
This is a true story.
it's a true story. Yep.
It sounds beautiful.
Yeah, it was a good book.
Yeah.
It's called A Man's Search for Meaning.
The man's
Okay.
search for meaning. Okay.
What's the most recent thing you learned in the industry?
The most recent thing that I learned in the industry. Oh boy. I can't think of anything.
Okay.
Tina's an expert. She maybe knows
The
everything.
most recent, no, isn't that terrible? That's terrible. The most recent thing I learned in the industry, it's about advertising. I don't know if that exactly correlates to
I love
what we're
it.
talking about wood, but is that people don't always tell the truth in their advertising. And, I've caught some competitors and some suppliers, competitive suppliers, pushing out information that is untrue. So that's kind of the most recent thing I learned in the industry.
Unfortunate, but
The
good
sad
to
side of
learn.
marketing.
It's
Yeah.
it's unfortunate, but I learned that very recently. Was very disappointed actually in our industry.
Well,
We'll link
next
them on our show
question.
notes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Describe the lumber industry in one word.
Fascinating.
That's a new one.
That is a new one.
And last, what is your favorite thing about the industry?
Without hesitation, it's people.
Every time.
My favorite thing about the industry is the people that I get to work with. Not only the people I work with here at MRS every day, who I love, but customers who I've gotten to know really well and have turned into friends. Women like you and other industry associates that I look forward to connecting with and learning from at association events, and kind of bringing this full circle to Steve Boyd, who hired me. He has a phrase that shows up in a lot of our marketing, and now I live that. And that phrase is, we buy from our friends and we sell to our friends. And that has proven true to me in the last 15 years.
Oh, I love that.
That's such a nice way to end.
Yeah.
Nice summary.
Steve's a guy, man. What a guy.
What a guy. Well, thank you so
He's
much,
a good,
Gina.
he's a really great leader, and I'm fortunate he brought me in to this business and that I get to work with him. He gave me a huge opportunity.
And he thinks the world of you. I've had many conversations, and so it's a reciprocal for sure. So
Thank you. That's great to hear.
Tina, you're amazing.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for spending time with us, making a beautiful PowerPoint, explaining conversions. I think we're coming away with some really good tools, and I'm really excited to share it.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys for having me. It was great.
Have a great Friday.
Oh, gosh, you too.
Bye.
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 Insane.